Welcome to my kitchen. I am Bee from Thermomix, and I hope today you will find some inspiration in this dish, which is actually a family favorite. Often it's called upon at least a couple of times a month. It is packed full of flavor and such an amazing recipe. If you haven't tried it yet, please put it on your to-do list. It is the kid-friendly butter chicken recipe that you'll find on cookidoo.com.au. So I'm going to run through this recipe with you, the initial parts, and then I'll explain at the end while the cook time is started. So let's begin. The first thing we're going to do is start off with our aromatics, and that is, I've gone ahead and prepped, it says 3 to 4 cloves of your garlic. If you prefer more like us, just pop in some extra. So that's going to be added to some turmeric, and it says 3 centimeters of fresh turmeric. So I usually just put in about a teaspoon worth of that. And I've just realized I don't have my ginger, my fresh ginger, so I'm just going to pull out the next ingredient, which is a 3 centimeter piece of fresh ginger. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing, just put in a teaspoon's worth, heaped teaspoon. If you're not a fan of ginger, just skip that part out. And then the next ingredient is our brown onion. So it said 1 onion, but we do love our onions, so I'm going to add that in. And then the optional next part is a fresh chili. Now, if your family do not love chili, then obviously leave this part out. I don't have any fresh to hand, so I'm going to put in what my family usually enjoys. So just adjust it accordingly. And then what we're going to do is blitz this part up. It's 3 seconds on speed 7, so I'm not going to talk. And then it says scrape down the sides and add in 60 grams of butter, but I'm going to use my olive oil. I'll just show you. Who doesn't love that? You don't have to have any more tears in the kitchen. Thermi will do all the work for you. So let's pour this in. 60 grams worth of olive oil. You can reduce it if you want to. It's basically just to make sure that your onions don't stick. And then I'm just going to scrape this down and then add in the other ingredients, which are absolutely the best. I think this combination of the spices that have been added are just so clever. This recipe is from Louise Keats, and she is just so talented when it comes to getting the flavors right. It really is amazing. So there we go. 1 teaspoon of your ground cumin. I love to be generous, so heaped. When it comes to this, we want the flavor. And then 1 teaspoon of ground cardamom. This really is a good ingredient also for Norwegian waffles as well, if you didn't know that. So, all right, next is 1 teaspoon of your ground cinnamon. And I'm also going to use a heaped spoon. Then 2 teaspoons of sweet paprika. So same thing again, just be generous. 2 teaspoons of garam masala. And if you haven't yet seen my video on how to make this from scratch, please have a look at that one because it's so super easy to do. Also, the next ingredient is 2 teaspoons of ground coriander. Pop that in. Then we're going to get the simmering basket. I'll just start that off. It's 4 minutes on 100 degrees Celsius, and that's speed number 1 on reverse. So let me just get that out. A great little hint and tip for you for the next stage where you have to prepare your chicken. I have a lot of customers ask me about how do you prepare, because it does specify the size of the chicken, and I've always found the best advice I can give you when it is about preparing the thigh of the chicken is when you have the chicken, make sure that you lay it flat. In other words, the surface of the thigh is actually the part that you're going to lay flat on your cutting board. And then what you will see is where the bone's been removed, it becomes like a little mountain. That's the best way to describe it. And that's how you can evenly cut it into three. So there will be a part of it where it dips down very close to where the surface is. So that's my first cut. And then the remainder of the thigh, I will just find some type of way to divide it into half again. Even if it is where the bulkier part of the thigh is, just chop it in half so that you're left with three pieces. Don't go smaller than that. I have found initially when I first started making recipes in Thermomix that the smaller the size chicken you cut initially, the it is just how it is, the more it will shred. And that is because it cooks very quickly, and then when it's cooked, it obviously will start falling apart like you would have in any other recipe if you cook it for a long time. Thermomix is really unique. You can have a curry in under 20 minutes like this. It's amazing. I love this machine and wouldn't live without it because it just helps make life easy and very simple when it comes to this. Especially, who needs to go to takeout? You can actually make it at home by yourself with a couple of ingredients. So this does take a little bit of a while. What you're doing is sweating down those onions. And a really, really important aspect, if you don't know this, you need to make sure that you're adding your spices at the beginning of the dish. Sometimes you'll see some recipes call for a finish, so to speak, and it usually will be a sprinkle of garam masala on top of what your dish is. The reason you have to have this in the beginning is that you want those perfumes and those aromas to be released into the ingredients. So you won't get that depth of flavor in a curry if you add those ingredients at the end. And usually, typically, you will add it when there is the stage where the onions go in. Hence the beginning part where you've chopped up the garlic, ginger and turmeric and added it in with the chili and the onions. So that is a great little tip for you if you want to experiment and make something in your Thermomix from scratch. That's a little tip for you to bear in mind. I am going to show you, this is roughly the piece of the chicken that you're looking at when you are going to make the dish or any type of curry that is going to cook for a while. I'm just going to get a cloth for my hand, and please don't cut it any smaller than that because you definitely wouldn't have some lovely chunky chicken. It will just be shredded with lots of sauce. So this is now finished, and then we're going to do the next step, and then I'll explain the rest of the recipe because it does take 17 minutes. There's a cook time for that. So we'll just add in those other ingredients and I'll walk you through those steps. All right. So it does call for 150 grams of cherry tomatoes. I never have those to hand. So my go-to, and apparently according to Thermomix Cookidoo, it says that this is my #1 ingredient that I use the most, which is tinned tomatoes. So it calls for 150. I actually don't add the cream in at the end because I make it a tomato base recipe. If you wanted to, you can just add that 150 instead of the cherry tomatoes, and then just put that aside if you wanted in some ice cubes, and make sure you use them up in other dishes as well, so don't waste. All right, 100 grams of tomato paste. I definitely use this. You definitely want to have this because it will help with your flavor. A little hint and tip, if you want to, I usually add in my sugar, but my sugar is somewhere else. I'll put in a teaspoon of sugar at this stage as well, just to help with the acidity of the tomatoes. So next is going to be your chicken. All right, so there's a kilo of chicken. You may have seen the other recipe on Cookidoo called creamy coconut chicken. It does say 500 grams there, and I often tell customers you're welcome to put in 1,000 grams. So the same as this recipe, and then just cook it for the 17 minutes for that recipe. All right, optional 1 tablespoon of lime juice if you'd love to add it in at this stage. And then what we're going to do is pop your lid on and your simmering basket and cook that for 17 minutes. That's speed 1, and that's reverse on a temperature of 100. So a great little tip for you then is, while this is happening, you can be cleaning your kitchen and prepping, having other things, getting other things ready. I have actually ahead of time cooked the rice and quinoa. I usually will do that together. If you haven't seen that video, I actually have that on YouTube. Go and have a look at how I usually prepare rice for my family, adding in an extra element of protein so they're not just getting white rice. Check out that video. It is quinoa and rice. So have a look at that. And then at the end of this recipe, or end of this cook time I should say, it tells you to put in 100 grams of fresh spinach. At this point, what I usually will tell customers if I'm making this at their home, or virtually now because I've relocated, I'll say if you have your thermo server, put the spinach at the bottom of the thermo server, and you actually don't need to do the next part because it says add the spinach into the bowl and stir it. So all you do is you put the spinach at the bottom of the server and pour that curry mixture in. So it basically means you finished the dish and you're going to cook the spinach or wilt the spinach. So that is a really, really good tip for you. You don't have to stir it in. It says leave it to stand for your 2 to 3 minutes, and then you're going to add in the rest of the ingredients. So 1 or 2 teaspoons of salt. This is up to you how much you want to add in. If you don't want salt, eliminate it if you're preparing it for a little one. And then also what you can do is add in that cream, 150 grams worth of cream. So like I say, I don't add that because we don't usually have that. And then optional, you can add some coriander as well at the end and incorporate it or sprinkle on top as a garnish. And then definitely serve it. It does say here actually 30 seconds to stir in the bowl, but like I say, you put it in the server and you can do the manual jig around. So serve that with your rice or some naan bread. Absolutely a family favorite at my house, hands down. And I don't think I would want to live without this recipe because I always get a it's a great feeling when you know that the family is happy and you've created something that is not jam-packed full of nutrition, jam-packed full of additives, but rather nutritional things that aren't full of preservatives and extra nasties that could potentially harm your children or cause a bit of eczema. So why not try this recipe at home? Like I say, much better than the takeaway option, Aldi option, Woolies option, Coles option. So I hope this recipe has inspired you. If you have any questions about your machine or you need some help, drop me a line. I'm happy to help you. I am B from Thermomix and hope you will join me again. Do take care. Ciao.